Hey there! So, in one of an occasional series of videos, very occasional, I'm going to show you a little thing I've been making to help with prototyping kill houses, and hopefully, possibly other things, but realistically, not much else. So first of all, I did this video, but rather than hitting start record, I hit stop record, so I won't lie to you, a bit pissed off about that, but hopefully this will be as fresh and exciting as it was the first time round. Yeah, so here is a shell of a building in which I shall be placing a kill house. This may or may not, according to who you believe, be a redo of a level where I made a remake of an old level for an old game I won't mention, but was unable so far to track down the mapper, so out of an abundance of caution I'm going to start from scratch and not base my level in any way on his or hers, and this will in no way be transformative of that material. It is barely inspired by, certainly not a copy within a copyright sense. Just thought I'd clear that up. So the original had lots of little concrete houses and things that are all very not modular, but this is Unreal Engine where things are modular and are reused as much as possible to make everything seem a bit more stale than previous versions of games. Hope we got that clear. So I made myself a little blueprint. Modular building. Ta-da! Hope you're impressed. The end. So what this does, it basically just assembles modules in a sort of building sense. So let's say it's 2x2 units. It will put that mesh twice between each corner, which is that mesh. You can have a roof or not have a roof. If you don't have a roof, you'll need a different wall mesh that doesn't have the hole with a roof. Each mesh has its own collision. That's all just assembled when you make the blueprint. You could use it as is for prototyping. For any final use, what you need to do is merge it into a mesh, export it, fix a few things up and bring it back in. It may be easier to do the modular bits inside your other 3D modelling program of choice. There is something to that. But as I say, this helps to prototype, just to make a few things and move them around and figure out where things are going to go roughly, and to do a few other bits and pieces. Now let's say that is a house, which will have a roof at some point. The system I've used to vary things in a sensible way is to say to define special pieces that go in special places. So wall number 0, unit number 0 is a door, we're saying, or unit number 1, or wall number 1, 2, and so on. A little bit clunky, but nice to have a manual, a user interface to do that, and possibly I might do that, but it's probably not worth the development time to get that working for what is a basic prototyping tool. And yes, I could make this a marketplace asset, but I don't really want to have to support something this rubbish for all of eternity. That's not my bag. I mean, if you're interested, let me know, but I don't really want to make this a thing I have to support because I'm quite lazy and quite busy. And you can add another special piece. Another special piece I've got is a window for basic kill housey pleasure. And what is more useful is you can just duplicate things and you begin to see the possibilities. And then you can just stick a roof on and you've got your little hidey hole. And the original map I was copying, no, not copying at all, inspired by, had holes in the roof you could drop down or look up or get a bit of light in. I thought about how to do that. I think what I'm going to do is just export it and do it in the other package when it's out there. So you can then, if you say, so what I propose to do is when I've finished prototyping, I might then go back to all of my modular pieces and make better versions of them that are more sort of production level. So they've got rounded corners maybe, some have got a bit of a divot and you might sort of splice them in randomly. You could extend it so that the walls will randomly vary between any number of different wall pieces. That's not too hard to do. I haven't done it yet because I can't be bothered. And so I may in due course, when the layout's done, revisit it, make these things better simply by changing those and then getting the blueprint to rebuild. And then patch up things as needed outside and bring them back in. There are some problems with that, so I'm going to show you. Another thing I can do with this is to do other kinds of things. So let's make this a 3x5 roughly. Let's get that out of the way. And get that there just to see. Don't want a roof. Imagine that these meshes didn't have holes in them. And I've got this thing, wall as present. If I click off that, any wall that's not present, it will take off the appropriate corners as well, with the assumption you're going to stick this onto things, so you don't need to have a special terminator. If you do, you just make that a special piece and make it have a side there. So I can precisely align it later on. And so this I was thinking would be some kind of prep area for teams. I mean, the game modes will probably be more random than this. But in terms of making an actual kill house, this would be a sort of safe area. Maybe I'll slap a decal on that, and I might go into this in a second. Okay, go on. So maybe I'll leave it like that. There are some problems when you get doorways. You have to basically just move the decal to either side. But for now, let's ignore that. I'm going to put a special piece in. I'm just going to check I'm recording because, you know, good I am. Right. Because I would have really lost my cool if that had been the case. And by cool, I mean shit. Special pieces. Let's find a doorway. Put a doorway. And let's duplicate that. Make that wall 2. And let's duplicate that. Make that wall 3. Maybe move that across. So, that didn't take long. That's that bit as I wanted it. Maybe, you know, something like that. But obviously you have to break it into 2 decals, one that side, one that side. Otherwise anybody walking through that door gets a red face for any number of reasons. This decal, well, I mean decals are decals. This is actually a solid colour decal. It doesn't use any texture or any mask, just has a tint. This is the prototype. So it actually just, this tint, which you can set in the material instance, just goes plugged straight into the base colour. The interesting thing is the opacity. Interesting is a very relative word. So it's mapped to the texture coordinates now. It's squished vertically. So I've got a scale overall for the noise to vary the opacity. Pardon me. And I separately vary the X scale so that I can compensate for it being squished. Because by default decals are square and I've squished it into a rectangle. So you can set in the material a scale factor for that, because the decals are a little bit unhelpful in the way they're set up. They don't do much. And this basically has this noise pattern which scales between the minimum opacity and 1 for the opacity. So that just gives it a slightly textured effect. Hard to see. Sorry about the blockiness, just want to save space on texture. So that you can see the opacity varies slightly. The effect is different when it's on brick and where it's on metal. And yeah, and that's just a solid colour, take decal. Now in Extremis you can use this as, let's just make a copy, save having to set up other things. You can make this just a wall. If we turn off, alright, turn off those ones. Again, just for simple prototyping, it's a bit of an overkill, but I can make a simple connecting wall. Let's just spin it round and you know, start assembling proper sort of kill house layout. Or I could, instead of that, just turn on the other wall and scale down. No, scale down that. And I was going to make those modules a bit smaller, so they're currently 3 meters. I might make them 2.5 meters to give a bit more flexibility and to yeah, make it sit better with most scale systems in use in Unreal. Again, just duplicate that to 1, and there you go. So that should very quickly, hopefully, allow me to set up a kill house layout. It may not be useful for anything else, but that's it. Okay, the last thing is the processing. I will merge that. So when you're finished with it, you merge it. These are probably sensible options that might need to be higher. I could replace the source actor. Yeah, why not? So I'm going to merge that to somewhere. Merged meshes. That's building 19. Save. Insufficient mesh components found for merging. Oh, well, that's because it's trying to do it again. So this is now, should be, a simple mesh. And if we find that in my confusing directory, yeah, that's just a simple mesh. Currently very simple number of triangles and vertices. The light map's probably a bit of a mess. What it tends to do is to build the light maps per panel, because these points where they meet are not merged, and I can't find a way to do that within Unreal. So what I have to do is to get it out of Unreal and make the changes there, which has other problems. And you have to do it in here and go Asset, Actions, Export. That's building 19. Whatever. Maybe that'll work better. Let's try that. In fact, I'm pretty sure my Lightwave doesn't support that. Let's try that. This is all new for me, because the problem I had, this is a previous one I did in the previous version of the video that I lost. The problem I had is... well, it's not even loading. Okay. That fooled it, didn't it? Let's try saving that again. With a different version of Furbooks. I know nobody calls it Furbooks. There we go. So that's what happened last time. Unreal uses a different coordinate system to other things, and there we go. So this is both the collision and the model. Right, where's my numeric thing gone? There we go. So a fix, not necessarily a good fix, is just to rotate about the x-axis 90 degrees, which secures that, but it does leave it off-center, I found. Maybe I can cure that too, because otherwise it doesn't replace the mesh in the same way, in the same place. So I may or may not have got that right. The collisions, when I export them, are all reversed. No idea why, but simple reverse faces, flip face, gets it all into the required format. So that's my collision, that's my mesh. And what I want to do is simply merge the points. And now, if we look at the light map, that's Unreal's version. And I've lost... make UVs, where's my... oh, that window's hiding somewhere. Alright, absolute state of this. Where is it? Okay, there we go. So simple make light map, and you can see that it's done what I want, which is to make each wall a single UV island. That is, in my view, a reasonable light map. It's triangulated because Unreal turns things into triangles when it imports them. It would be nice to undo that, but here we are, working with triangles. In theory I could merge them all. Well, what do you know? I'm not going to bother keeping it that way because it'll just undo that when I load it back in again. Although if I do that and then take out the excess points, it will triangulate it differently and maybe more efficiently when it re-imports. So that has made it a slightly more efficient model. I don't think I can be bothered to do that, and in some ways being stretched out makes them slightly worse for various purposes. So I'll keep that there, and I'll do that. And so now I can just do some finessing. I need to do things in Lightwave specifically, like turning on... oh god, which one is it? This one. Turning on the smoothing again, because Lightwave does it differently, because God knows why, but it does. There we go. And you can do things like, and I will merge that. You can do things like putting holes in the roof by whatever means. That's not going to work. So that is the hackiest way I've ever done it. Hard to see. Let me just brighten up that surface a bit. That is stone world aligned. Let's change that to something more pretty. So this is my quick hack to make a hole in something. Wait, where am I going to? Oh, I've really messed this up. And then delete that. And that leaves you with a nice hole. Textures are messed up, so I could retexture it. Well, yeah, let's select everything. And it was there right in front of me. So this is just a random rubbish. Let's just do that a bit. See what happens there. And I'll make a light map because I don't trust Unreal. That's probably roughly sort of okay. I have to save it as something else apparently. And I'll export that. And let's bring it in. So a bit of a faff, but this is obviously the final bit where you don't have to do it more than once in an ideal world. So that is not textured well. What's up with that? Probably the materials aren't set up because Lightwave and Unreal do not play nicely. There we go. Materials are not set up. And that one. Okay, so that's what I have to do to make it work. Just resaving it, going back to Unreal, going to re-import it. Okay, so you can see from the checkerboard that will work with generic materials. So if I switch away from my, well, I'm not using them at the moment, if I switch away from my world aligned textures, and I'll show you briefly. I mean, you probably know what they are, but this is an example of a world aligned texture. Not a good one. In fact, what the hell's going on here? But this is the crux of it. In this case, I've got two world aligned textures at different scales I'm merging together so that it gives it a sort of a detailed texture as well as a far off texture. And that is a bit expensive. It's not extremely expensive, but if you compare it to other things like, this could be awful. Yeah, this one's pretty awful actually. Let's find a cheap material so I can pretend that what I'm doing is good. Let's go to building. Simple material. That's a world core. Alright. This is still not simple material. This has got macro texture variation. This has got your basic setup with there's your material multiplied by a few things to give it a bit of variation. And this is cheaper. Not a lot cheaper, but generally speaking the ones that aren't world aligned are cheaper. I think I saw a nice wood one. Let's just see what happens if I use that. So this might go horribly wrong, but where's my getting? That's 5, that's not what I want. That's not what I want. Alright, that's my one. So if I use the wood texture, the scale's not right, but you can see, yeah, that needs work too. But you can see that, it's now a proper texture with proper properties. And if I can find a sort of bricky texture, that will round things off. Well, what happens if I put that one in? Come back. Right, so that is ugly. That needs to be doubled in size. Let me just quickly do that. Go away. So texture. Let's just simply double that in size. That's how I roll. And re-import this. So looking better already, not perfect, but if I then browse to here, yeah, so I got that origin point wrong. But that is my horrible finished mesh in game. So yeah, but I won't do that stage until I've finished all the layout. I think that's basically all I was going to show you for now, so I hope that's of interest. Is there anything in the blueprint you need to see? Probably not. So I've tried to make it clear. It just makes the corners, makes the walls, makes the roof, and I've abstracted things like how many units in the wall to simple macros. It's not doing much, but it's just abstracting it away. Iterating through each of the one, find out what mesh you should use for the wall, using that lookup table of special meshes, add a static mesh component, set the static mesh to be what it should be. Nothing fancy. So there we go. Cheerio.